Alright, this is going to be a pretty horseshit video, an experiment to see just how much water weight I will pick up in these running shoes, because I'm a little panicked. I've got a marathon coming up, very specific times, very specific pace that I need to hit, and it's supposed to be raining. I don't know how much, but if I get my feet drenched, I do want to know how much weight will be added to my shoes, because that will determine what pace I should be running. I'm not going to knock myself out if the increase in water weight is simply going to put it out of reach. So I think the way we do this is we start off with the old brewing scale here. Why the plastic wrap? You know, a few days ago I stepped in dog shit with those running shoes. So let's keep that out of the brewing. Out of the brew. Turn the sucker on. We're good. Let's do this. Good. We're in grams. We're ready to go. All right. If you try this, your mileage may vary. This is the dry starting weight. I use some fairly heavy insoles. These are sole footbeds. These are a bit old, and you can see that they've got some felt on the bottom, which I need. So let's try that. We got my Nike Structure Tri-X, X-Teen, whatever the heck they are. So we throw those on. We're at 369 grams there. Dry weight. We're at 457 plus the insole, and let's throw in a typical racing sock. That is a right sock, thin double layer. We're at 475 for the left foot. Just for the heck of it, let's compare the right foot as well. Come here, you. Get on there like that. And right foot, 451. Hey, does it matter where it is? Let's shove this in here. You get in there. Alright, pick it up. Back. 451. So we're 25 grams heavier on the left. Probably that extra piece of felt on the left shoe. So that's our dry weight, and I'm going to run this experiment a couple of ways. I'm going to go outside. Before my run here, I'm going to douse my feet with the hose and then take a few steps, so we'll get a pretty good, I think, approximation of what it would be if your feet just went, if you went right into a puddle or a river, or you got completely drenched in the rain. You took a few steps to pump out the majority of the water. We'll take a weight reading then. Then I will go out and run a couple miles, since I'm tapering for the marathon. That's it, and we'll weigh them when I get back from that run, and we'll see in the course of 2 miles if we lose any more water weight. Alright, time to take this experiment outside. What the heck is running around in the woods over there? Anyway, I see. Shoes, hose. Let's give them a good dousing and see what happens to the weight on you. Alright, good. Let's not spray that on the phone. Come on. Alright. How hot is that? Not too bad. Okay. Utter. Alright, so this is downpour, like the one we got in Twin Cities Marathon in '98. Or, you know, alternatively, I guess, running through a river on a trail run, something a lot of us do fairly often. This shoe probably drains okay. So for the purposes of this one, we get it completely soaked. I can feel it all the way on the bottom of my feet. By the way, these are size 13. I'm guessing smaller shoes, less fabric, throw on less weight. Okay, that's pretty good. Alright. Take a few steps just to see. Wow, those feel heavy. Just to pump out the most of the water. So you can see it squirting out. That is sloshing. Alright, so let's take the worst case scenario right there. Let's go with the left shoe. That one weighed, was it 475 grams, the shoe and sock combination. There's the shoe by itself. It is now 641 grams. Throw in the wet sock, and you are at 720 grams. Okay. Let's try the right one, as long as I'm taking stuff off here. right shoe and and sock combo. 671 grams. Alright, the next step is I'm going to put everything back on, re-wet the shoes. And I'm going to run just a couple of blocks in them and do a test there. Then I'm going to do the same thing, run a couple of miles in them, and we'll see where we come out. Okay, got another costume change. Whew. Little hill at the end there. Ran about a little more than half a mile. Had to stop and take a snake off the trail so I wouldn't get squished. It was a black racer. He actually shook his tail like a rattlesnake. It was really weird, man. It was rattling against the pavement. Anyway, okay, this is half mile of running. Shoes were redoused, and we'll see if we have any difference, appreciable difference in water weight between getting soaked and immediately weighed or getting soaked and running for a while. So, what do we got here? 606 grams. That seems a lot better. Maybe not great, it's still a lot better. It's still, what, 30% more than we had before. We were at 475 to 606. I can't do that math in my head. So we're still a lot heavier, but not quite as heavy as we were when we'd just gone through the puddle. And now we're at, with the right shoe, 576 grams. So again, a little bit better. Whew, alright, it's a nice day, a little bit hot. Sweating. Time to re-wet the shoes, run 2 miles in them, come back, weigh them again, and see what kind of results we get. Alright, we're back in the kitchen, which tells you that after a 2-mile run and a quarter-mile walk back, the shoes are dry enough that I don't feel bad that they will completely slop up the kitchen, although the disgusting hair sitting here gives you an idea about our levels of hygiene here at the house. Wow, it tastes worse than it looks. So, let's try Mr. Left Shoe here. We got, dun dun dun, we're sitting at 536 grams right now. We add the sock, we end up with 575 grams. What do we got? 40 grams? 576. So way to go. Alright, 40 grams for a wet sock. I don't know if I got a dry sock weight on there, but I have some identical socks I can weigh in the dry later. Let's check Mr. Right Shoe. We're at 511 grams there. Mr. Disgusting Wet Right Sock. That in, and we end up with 551. So that's our baseline, and let's sit down and run a little math and figure out what that is supposed to turn into. Okay, so you saw the different scenarios I used to try and check out what the shoes would weigh based on, well, you saw the dry weight, you saw completely drenched with only a few steps between dousing and the weigh-in, you saw the weight after a half-mile run, and you saw the weight after a couple miles of running and a quarter-mile walk. This was all running on dry pavement for the most part, so this presumes that you get really drenched, and then it levels off to not adding a whole lot of water to your shoes. At least that's the assumption. What you see highlighted in pink here are the weight differences, which is what matters for us, because we're going to assume that your baseline speed assumptions already include the shoes that you are going to wear for the race. So you see that you are in pretty bad shape once the shoes are completely drenched here. We're talking about, well, 245 grams, 220 grams. That is somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 ounces or a half a pound, which is a lot of extra weight on your shoes. And this was really wet shoes. After a half a mile of running, the shoes were still kind of sloshy. You could see water kind of squirting out of the front, but you can see that the weight gain was quite a bit less, in the neighborhood of only about half of what it was when they were completely drenched, about 4.4 ounces or 4.6 ounces. And then after a couple of miles of running, most of the water had worked its way out of the shoe and sock combo, and we were down to, in both cases, about 100 grams extra, That's about 3.5 ounces. So what does that mean for your speed across a marathon? Well, that's not entirely clear because there's not a whole lot of research done on this that makes it really easy to understand. So Jack Daniels, everyone's kind of familiar with that, did some studies that everybody refers to, all the literature refers back to it. So they take it as gospel. Either it's good stuff or nobody's been willing to redo the experiments or redo the study, which says that for 100 grams of weight on your shoe, you're going to have to expend 1% more in aerobic energy. This is taken from the Livestrong website, but you find it other places on the internet. They also claim that Nike calculated that taking 4 ounces off a shoe would mean a faster time by up to 3 minutes. I could not find a reference for that, and yes, I am aware that the Lance Armstrong Foundation talking about the performance enhancement possible by using EPO is more than a little bit weird. So let's go through this and do a little reverse engineering math. The way I approached it was this. I can't really figure out exactly what Daniels would mean by how much extra time we would have to add to it by using 1% more aerobic energy. Let's talk about it in terms of VO2 max, which is something he does talk a lot about. And these are VO2 max prediction engines you can find on the internet based on Daniels' numbers. So let's take what's my PR in the marathon. This isn't really a best effort, but it's the best I've ever done, and that's about 3 hours, 5 minutes, 50 seconds. Just sort of based on rough calculations, that gives me a VO2 max 51.25. So if we take a shoe and sock, an insole weight increase 100 grams, we expect a 1% increase in VO2 use. Let's just try decreasing that VO2 max number up there by 1%, shall we? Let's have a question mark. If we do that, we come up with, hey, let's say your VO2 max is now 50.74 instead of 51.25. Can we reverse the calculation and predict time? We can, based on this little web engine. So you see here that what I've done is I calculate a race time using that first VO2 max of 51.2. That gives me a predicted marathon time down here, 3:06:44. That's not quite a minute slower than what I did. So I think that's in the ballpark. And that comes out at 7 minutes, 7 seconds a mile. Reduce that VO2 max to 50.7 to account for the extra 100 grams per shoe, and you come out with 3:08:19 for a time and 7:11. So you add about 4 seconds a mile. How does that compare to the rules of thumb that we saw with Nike? Well, Nike said 4 ounces would mean up to 3 minutes in the marathon. The results below are for 100 grams or 3.5 ounces per shoe. Uh-oh. So what does that mean? They indicate a time difference of 1.35 minutes, about half of what Nike had. I'm not sure. Did Nike mean per pair of shoes, while Daniels may have meant per shoe? I can't find the original research to figure that out. Or am I just doing things wrong? Is it stupid to take Daniels 100 grams, requires 1% more aerobic effort, and just turn that into, let's assume, the same course with 1% lower VO2 max? Is that a dumb way to approach it? Maybe it is. It's what came to me when I was trying to figure out how to possibly alter my time based on the weather conditions, or my target based on the weather conditions. We can see here again the direct comparison from the previous page. The way I look at it is this: worst case scenario, assuming your feet aren't continually soaked like in a severe thunderstorm, is that you're probably going to come out of an early race dunking and it'll cost you 1 minute to 3 minutes over a marathon. And the weight penalty alone, that's a little bit less than 5 seconds a mile. My rule of thumb is that 5 seconds a mile generally gets you somewhere in the neighborhood of about 2.5 minutes in a marathon. Now, if you can take a steady rain to be about the equivalent of that sort of half-mile situation that I tested where the shoes were still a little squishy, you were looking at about 125 grams per shoe rather than the 100, which was the low end. And that probably means about 2 to 4 minutes over a marathon course. And that is about, oh, I got the math wrong here. So 2 seconds is in the neighborhood of 2 minutes. So 5 seconds is 2 minutes, so that's somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 to 10 seconds a mile, depending. That's pretty rough. No, sorry, 5 to 10 seconds
per mile. Let's get the math right. 2 to 4 minutes, yeah, 2 minutes is 5 seconds, 4 minutes would be 10. So that's 5 to 10 seconds per mile if your shoes continually stay about 125 grams heavier, which I think would be tough to do. My shoes were still really wet then. You'd have to have a pretty steady rain coming down and a lot of water flowing down your legs. My takeaway I have for this is if it's raining pretty heavily, that is probably enough to ruin your PR bid if you're kind of you're close. In my case, I was hoping to run something in the neighborhood of 258. If it rains on us pretty hard, I'm pretty sure I'm not going to get there. But it's probably not enough to ruin your day. You're only adding 3 to 5 minutes. You can still run a pretty good time.